One. Okay.
Good morning, and can we start with the bell? I'm delighted to be with you this morning to continue our discussion of diversity in Shambhala. As you may remember from my last talk, I talked about a basic view of diversity as a way to begin to more fully embrace our ability to create enlightened society. And I asked the Diversity Awareness Working Group if I could give a second talk, a little more developed, on a topic that is very dear to my own heart. And I hope that I can open up this topic and that all of your groups can continue to really look deeply into this topic. As a reminder, in Shambhala, all of our teachings, all of our talks, all of our practices are based on the view of basic goodness, of the completeness, the sanity, the heart, the capacity of every being to be fully realized, awake human beings. And this is really the foundation of our view of diversity in Shambhala as well. It's always important to remember that as the foundation, that fundamentally that quality is there waiting to be discovered and to be developed in every being. Very often we lose confidence in our own basic goodness, and so as we work together one-on-one, we develop confidence in our own basic goodness as we encounter the basic goodness of others. And definitely as we encounter the basic goodness of society, we also deepen our own confidence in basic goodness. And this also helps us to really work together to bring out the goodness of people when they live together in community and practice together in groups. So this is all part of taking community life, community practice as our path. On the topic of diversity, I've been lucky enough to teach for many years at Naropa University. And a number of years ago, Naropa began to realize we as an institution needed to grow. And in order to grow, we needed to really understand something about diversity. It was really central to our understanding of creating an enlightened society as a university. And we realized in order to grow and develop, we needed to attract diverse faculty, students, staff, supporters of all kinds. And we turned to a variety of elders for advice. And I remember that one of the people we turned to over 20 years ago was Professor Vincent Harding, who's an African-American professor emeritus from Iliff School of Theology and the University of Denver. He was a speechwriter for Martin Luther King and is a well-known civil rights scholar and leader. And he came to teach at Naropa in the Religious Studies Department, and I got to know him and treasure him as an elder and advisor. Dr. Harding said that if you really want to attract students of color to Naropa, you need to begin by really looking at your own minds, and you also need to build faculty and staff who are diverse as well. And so Naropa really began the process of investigating what it is that we needed to do in order to grow in areas of diversity. And we've had the great privilege of attracting elders and advisors, trainers over the years who have really helped us understand how deeply enmeshed in privilege universities all across the country are, and the changes that we need to go through in order to really develop and attract a diverse student body, faculty, and staff. I remember that Dr. Harding, at one point in a graduation speech at Naropa, probably 12 years ago, got up and in his prophetic voice said, "We don't need another religion that supports racism the way Christianity in America has done." And he feels that in these early generations of Buddhism in America, Buddhism in the West, we need to really look carefully at how we build community so that we don't reinforce patterns of suffering and oppression the way that many religions in our cultures have done. So I speak today not as an expert in any of this by any means. I feel that I'm really a beginner. I have begun to really think with wonderful colleagues in Shambhala and at Naropa about issues of diversity, and to try to really begin to unpack all of the issues that we are so often unaware of. I began with these contemplations, as I said in my last talk, as a young professor in a university and facing gender prejudice from my colleagues and from my university. And this has gotten me started in thinking about this in all kinds of areas of diversity in Shambhala, at Naropa, and in the world. So the fundamental ground of what I'm talking about today is confidence in basic goodness of us as individuals, our relationships with each other, and society. On the other hand, we've gotten lost in distractions and seductions of power and privilege, and have forgotten basic goodness. We've forgotten our own basic goodness and feel the need to advance ourselves over and above others in order to feel good about ourselves. We feel that we are stronger if we oppress others, and as a result we've lost track of basic goodness in our cultures. And this has caused enormous harm and difficulty. But in this time of developing a global world together with diverse peoples, it's time for us to return to that sense of basic goodness that we all have deep in our hearts, and to begin to unpack the systems, the interlocking systems of oppression that keep us caught in causing pain for ourselves and others. So as we look deeply into topics of diversity, last time I asked us to consider who is not here with us in Shambhala, who is missing. And I looked very briefly, and I'll look briefly again today, who comes to Shambhala programs, who becomes a member, who feels that this is really something that they would like to commit to. And we look around and we see that we are attracting mostly heterosexual women and men. We are so often missing the opportunity to attract people who are people of color, people who are poor, people who have disabilities, who have a difficult time making it into our buildings. We have also a very small and often invisible membership of GLBT members, and we really need to look at this situation in order to really grow as a society. So I also want to bring to our attention issues that come up in our communities in Europe. When I was recently at Dechen Chulling, I'm very aware of how Shambhala Europe has issues of language. English speakers are more naturally members of Shambhala, but those who do not speak English have a very difficult time coming. And so issues of translation and having the teachings available in every language group of the countries where Shambhala is represented is very important. We really need to look at the structure of Shambhala and how it is that our fee structure, our business plan, excludes people, because without money it's very difficult to receive these teachings. Without childcare, it's very difficult for family members, people with families, to join our programs. We also, of course, attract people who are willing to be connected with Buddhism, but we often do not engage in communication with people of other religions and spiritual lineages. So we need to really look at how it is that we include certain people and exclude others, And without this, we cannot really grow as a community. So, if you have logged onto this talk, I believe you've been given a link to download a diagram. And I would like to start with this diagram for the next section of my talk. It's called the Wheel of Diversity. And it was developed by two diversity scholars, Marilyn Loden and Judy Rossiner. It's basically a diagram that outlines the ways that we identify ourselves, or more accurately, how others identify us. So I'll take a moment for you to get this diagram and have it in front of you for the next section of my talk. You're going to need it. The diagram is like a wheel. In fact, it is a wheel with a center wheel and an outside wheel. And it's a wheel that's really based upon the ways that our societies often identify us. Sometimes we don't identify ourselves this much, but others identify us this way. And I would like to talk about myself with reference to the wheel and go through the various categories so that I could identify myself as society sees me. I'm starting at the hub, and at the bottom of the wheel, I am female. I am of Swedish, German, and English extraction, some mixture, mongrel mixture of those three. I'm white. I am 65 years old, heterosexual, and mostly not disabled, although as I'm getting older, I'm getting a little deaf. So this is one of the areas where all of us are going to have opportunities to experience a bit of disability if we live long enough. And as we age, we develop certain disabilities along with aging very often. The next ring out, I'd like to go through those areas as well. I am married. I am middle class, sometimes struggling middle class, but middle class. I'm a professor, Dharma teacher, Acharya. I have a PhD. I'm the mother of 2 adult children with a grandchild on the way. I've lived in Colorado in the United States for 35 years. I am Buddhist and have been Buddhist for 42 years, but I was raised Christian, and I've never served in the military. So at this point, I'd like each of you to place the wheel in front of you, and I'd like you to sit quietly with yourself, and I'd like you to go through the wheel, starting with the lower right hand, or the lower quadrant of the inner wheel, starting with gender, and go through all of these categories and say quietly to yourself how you are understood, what is your niche in society. So we'll take a moment to do that.